is about the right amount to cover one of these canvases. So I filled one up to 4 ounces and the other up to 8 ounces. And then it has to be mixed for 3 minutes. So I set the timer on my phone to 3 minutes and I just keep mixing it for 3 minutes. And then I pour it into this contraption. I made this box. Oh, I always wear gloves because it's really hard to get this off if it gets on here. This is what I mix it with. This box captures the resin that pours off the edges of the canvas. And I have the two pieces of wood there so that it's raised off the bottom. So that otherwise the resin would stick to the edge of the bottom edge of the canvas and I wouldn't be able to get it out of here. So I lift it up. Oh, it got heavy because all the resin that's in here has stripped off the resinations that I've made. Are 100. I've made 100 resinations. So the other thing is, you put the canvas. This is what everything starts with: a blank white canvas. So you put the canvas here and have to make sure it's level, because if it's not, the resin will pour off one end and it won't cover everything. And then after mixing it and pouring it on here, it forms a lot of bubbles. So you want to get rid of the bubbles. Use a heat gun and go all like this, and all the bubbles disappear. And then it has to set for 24 hours. To make sure no careless artist drops something on it, or no dust drops on it, I cover it with this. And no, that's the hard part, not looking at it for 24 hours. And then it's a shiny, beautiful surface. And not only is it a shiny, beautiful surface, but it serves the purpose of making it look more like an object than a collage. I mean, the fact that everything that I've put on the canvas has the same shine, and it all looks like one thing. So I'm going to tell you about a few of them and how they evolved. This one started with a photograph. Who can tell me what they think this is a photograph of?
Oh,
This
yeah.
one, okay, Ted? Yes, you got it. It's the back of my hand.
Right.
It's the back of an 84-year-old hand. So I take the photograph and I airdrop it into I take the photograph with my phone, airdrop it into the computer, manipulate it, make sure I can get it to be 12 by 12 inches, which is the size of the canvas, and paste it on. And then the question is, what to do with it to make it an image that I like? So I have plastic containers that are full of stuff. There are pieces of trim, pieces of fabric, wire, all kinds of wire, rope, string, feathers, all kinds of stuff, and buttons. So I lay all that out on my table, and that becomes my palette. In this case, I added a little section of, what boas are? Those feathery things you put around your neck. Well, this was the part that fell off those boas, the two black strips. And these are from something, I don't know, some package, little corners of some package. And I put it all together, pour on the resin, and voila, there it is. That's it. This one started from a colored pencil sketch in a sketchbook. It was small, so again I photographed it, put it in the computer, made it larger, added the stipple around the edge with a Photoshop filter, and it looked very soft. So I wanted something soft around the edge. So I did have some fiber film, polyester fiber film, which is used to fill cushions if you're making cushions. And so I glued the strips of those along the edge and painted them a little bit pink. And needed something to stick out. So I took a little wire and made a little shape of the wire in the center. And
Is that why it's sticking out? Can I?
Yes,
touch it?
it's raised.
Oh, all right. So you can-
yeah, see that's raised?
Yeah.
Hey, Nikki, can I be Venom White and hold these things for you while you talk about
I'm
them?
finished talking about that
Well,
one.
Which one's
The next one, please.
Oops, this way, right?
This is a piece of bark that we found on the ground, Jeff and I, taking a walk downtown. So I picked it up and put it onto the canvas. Well, I painted the canvas this color first because I thought it looked nice with the bark. And then it needed something. This is aluminum wire, but on it is shrink wrap. It's a tube that you can put the wire in, and then if you heat it, it shrinks onto the wire, so it's the shape of the wire. That's the back. and and I just attached it here and thought it needed something, and I had this little gold square from someplace, and I thought, I don't know, and that's how that evolved. So it's not pre-planned. I have no idea what these things are going to look like when they're finished until they're finished. How I know they're finished? They just look finished to me. That's how I know that they're finished. That's about it. And
Moving on.
this one, I started thinking about the fact that all the ones I've made, I was just adding things to the front. So I thought, well, what would happen if I cut it open and added something to the back? That would add a different kind of depth. So with my heart in my mouth, I slit open the canvas and then cut it into strips and just folded them over. And there you have it. So that's pretty much the process by which I work. And all of the images are pretty much abstract when they're finished. And so it's always hard to describe what abstraction is. Because it just catwalks. It's hard to know what abstraction is. It's just the way I described it to a class when I was teaching contemporary art history was if you wanted to paint the feeling of sunlight on the water without painting either the water or the sun, how would you do it? Kind of an abstract idea. And so abstraction is something that's hard to verbalize about. You just, what you see is what you get. That is basically the abstraction. If anyone has any questions or comments in between, yeah.
When did you begin this process of learning?
I didn't hear
When
what
did
you
you
said.
begin this process of learning how to do this?
What?
When did you begin?
When did you begin it?
When
I
did you
became
begin?
this process?
Yeah.
I began it when I think there was an art collective show that wanted 12 by 12 inch pieces, and I had a couple of the canvases that I had ordered. You know, if you buy them from Jerry's Autorama, which is, by the way, where I got the resin from, they come in packages of 3. So I made one, and I had 2 left over, and I started fiddling with it. And I had seen some work with that was coated with resin in a gallery, and I just decided to experiment with it. And after I did a few, I thought I did a few more, and then I said, I'm going to challenge myself and see if I can think of 100 where each one is totally different from every other one. And that's what I did. And I did do 100. And now I'm finished doing them, and now I don't know what to do. On to the next thing. Yes?
You used to do realistic paintings back in the day, and then you went to sculpture that was abstract. What converted you from realistic images to abstract?
Painting, and I painted for 15 years. But one day I saw a show in New York with Martin Puryear's sculptures, and they were primarily abstract. And I was carrying a little sketch pad on the train back and forth from Connecticut to New York. I was going to try to make quick sketches of people. And I said, I wonder what it would be like if I just drew a shape. So I was just doodling with a ballpoint pen, and I drew a couple of shapes that looked kind of interesting to me. I brought them home and showed them to Jeff, my husband, and I said, "What do you think?" And he said, I think you should make them a little bigger. So I did. I made the drawings bigger, and then within the scribbles, which were totally just some unconscious, just scribbling, I'd see a shape that somehow seemed meaningful for no particular reason, and so I made those shapes larger and a little more finished looking. And then one day I decided to try to build one. And that was my first attempt at a sculpture. Unfortunately, I tried it with string dipped in Elmer's glue. It didn't stand up too well. It only stood up about that high. And Jeff said, "Why don't you try some wire?" And that is how my sculptures started to evolve. And from that point on, they were all abstract. Any other questions or comments?
Question.
Yeah.
Obviously, you've had a phase with some realistic painting. You've got a creative imagery. Do you see the next wave of where you would evolve, and what would that be?
No idea. That's the point. It's that everything. I think of art, a life of art, as a conversation, a lifelong conversation, and one sentence leads to the next. The, I didn't work for about a year while we were building the studio, which we were told was going to take 2 months. And then I got everything arranged, I washed everything, I put everything on the shelves, and I walked in there and I said, "Oh my God, I have no idea what to do here." So maybe I should start teaching classes or something. And then gradually just started working. And when you work, that's what leads to other imagery and other ideas. It's the only way I can describe it. Anything else? You have another one? You're allowed.
What about the medium? What inspires you to go from wire to you have some sculptures that are wood and then resin? How do you decide what material?
Usually, whatever I can pick up and fiddle around with becomes the next medium that I use. But most of the sculptures are wire. Uh, because I was imitating the scribbled line to start with. And after I was imitating the scribbled line for a while, I stopped thinking of them as a line and started thinking of them as a surface. And once I thought about it as a surface, then other surfaces were an option. And so that's how that. I'm going to show you some pictures of
One more
some of my
question.
sculptures.
Inspiration. Who has inspired you? What artists, what sorts of work has inspired you in the more classical and in this? Because, you get impressions and growth from other sources.
Well, I think I used to see every single show in New York every month, but now that there are thousands of galleries, it's absolutely impossible to do that. Looking at other art, just being in the studio around my materials, I'm surrounded by my own work, which is 50 years worth of work. So that inspires me to go on. Yes,
You did 100 different images and you decided not to repeat yourself. When you look at,
I came to you.
you did over 100 images and you decided not to repeat yourself. Now, if you look at those 100 images, did you see any kind of theme, any kind of shape, anything which was repetitive and which want to express itself through these 100 images?
I don't think there is a theme other than the fact that they're all coated with resin. And no theme and no particular direction. That was the point, to see how I could think of a different idea for every single one of them. It was just a formal challenge to myself to see if I could do that. Yes.
It's have you it's you described how you don't start from a sketch,
Right.
but have you ever thought about trying to do a drawing and a sketch that would be the idea that you would then carry through once you have the materials there?
Yes, but the scribbles ended up being drawings that were more definite shapes, and that's what I tried to build. That's how I ended up working with wire, because it was imitating the drawing. I have a lot of drawings. Not all of them became sculptures.
But you didn't sit down and say with a square and say to draw out the idea that you would turn into the final version?
No, we're starting with the sketch and then deciding which ones of the sketches could become sculptures. But of course, the drawings were always two-dimensional, so the three-dimensional part had to be worked on. And the difference between making resinations and sculptures is that with sculpture, you really have to plan ahead because you have to build a structure that has to stand up. And fortunately, I'm married to an engineer and make a structure that would make things stand up. Because the first few I made with the string tilted back, almost glue sort of collapsed. Anything else? Well, I'm going to show you some. Oh yes, there's another question. Oh yes, yes.
Someone asked about a theme. Uh, isn't isn't it true that a lot of the resonations have a basic image in them that is something in real life that's not abstract? For instance, the one you showed with the back of the hand, that's starting with something that's real, and aren't there many others that start with something stovetop or blacktop or
Yeah, some of them are the ones that start with photographs. I photographed everything, like the cracks in the road filled with tar, the lighting fixture in our closet, things like that. But others, like this, didn't start with anything else. I just worked on the thing itself. Or the mark. Yeah,
Nikki, have you ever done jewelry with this process?
I can't hear you.
She's talking about jewelry.
Yes.
Yeah. Any thoughts on jewelry?
I like jewelry. I haven't ever made jewelry. I tend to like to work large. This is very small for me. The sculptures that I make, for the most part, are 5 feet high to 10 feet high. So I think part of what I like about working large is that I work with very small diameter wire, and I really go over every single inch of it. I feel like it's I feel tender toward my work, and then I try to make each little spot look right. It's not like some male sculptors who work with big steel beams. I don't work with precious materials. They're not marble. They're not bronze. They're not gold. Gold. You know who works with that? and
How big these things are.
yeah, wait, I want to show this one. This one is in the collection of the museum, the National Museum of Women in the Arts, and it's 7 feet 2 inches tall, and 2 feet in diameter. And so the inside is painted red. All the paint is Rust-Oleum usually that I spray on, and the outside is black, and I call it confined because it looks like something that's confined, a confinement. And I also, another thing about my sculptures is I often have wires that stick out and they're somewhat translucent so that they're not just there, they also blend with the environment because you see it and it reaches out.